Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask Jameen. I'm Nicci Willis, and
I'm Jameen.
And today's question is HOA versus no HOA. And which one might you choose? Let's find out. Here we go. So today's question, HOA versus no HOA. But before we get into it, I want to remind you to make sure you subscribe, hit that button down there below, and hit the bell so that you are notified every time we upload new content. We are growing, guys. We are turning into a community, and we are so excited. We love your comments and questions, and we love engaging with you. So definitely, if you have a question, put it in the comments below. We would love to help answer that for you. All right. HOA versus no HOA. First of all, did you know that 73% of Las Vegas has HOAs?
So it's a fun fact.
Well, fun fact then, 73% of Las Vegas has HOAs. So it's, I guess 7 times out of 10, most likely, if you're purchasing, it's going to be within an HOA. But let's talk about the benefits or the pros and cons of being in an HOA versus not being an HOA, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of that. Cool?
Yeah.
All right. So let's do it. Let's talk about, first of all, the benefits of being in an HOA. An HOA means Homeowners Association. So just for reference for you guys who've never heard of an HOA, or if you're coming from a city where HOAs aren't as popular, that is what an HOA is. It's a homeowners association that sets the rules and regulations for that community or that subdivision.
Yeah, so a lot of people kind of need to get used to that, especially people who relocate here, because we get people that relocate here from all over the country.
Yes.
So a lot of people are only used to HOAs being in a condo or a townhouse or a condominium.
Right.
Versus here, where we have a lot of master plan communities, so even a single family house, has a HOA or two.
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they first get here, like, oh, I don't want to deal with a HOA, but they don't think about the benefits of it or why, a lot of communities have a HOA. So
yeah,
the benefits, so the first thing is, after you get over the initial shock that I have a single family house and I have a HOA, the first benefit is, even now, like when I was looking on the news, you have people still in catalytic converters.
Yeah.
And you have people drilling holes in gas tanks. The gas prices are not that high. Come on, people. But the first thing is security.
Yeah.
So when you have a HOA, a lot of the things that fee that you pay covers security. And so when I say security, I mean like gated. So you have gated, and then you have gated with a guard. And then, in some HOAs, you actually have security, driving around or walking around or in golf carts and things like that. So one of the big advantages of HOA is the security, even if it's just a gated, community where you have to punch in a code or you have to have a key fob.
Yep.
It keeps some of the riffraff out.
So true. Yeah. Another benefit of having an HOA is they will keep the grounds for you. Now, that could mean they could keep the grounds all the way up into your front door, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. And then there are some where maybe the entrance of the subdivision or community, they might keep that, beautiful. But it does help with the overall look and property value. When you're driving into a community, you see lush bushes and everything's painted, and the streets look great, the sidewalks look great, and that is something that an HOA helps pay for.
That was one of the things that I really liked, and one of the things that attracted me to this particular area. So it's like when I drove here, and I was here by myself before we moved here, I drove up and I saw Del Webb with the waterfall and all that stuff. So for me, it's like you work hard, and when you come home from work or wherever you're coming from, and you come home and you drive up to that. When you first get into the subdivision, if you have a waterfall or nice landscaping and things like that, you know, you feel like you work for something when you're driving home. And then, you know, it's like when you have company, or, you know, just when you're driving up to your home, it's something pleasant to look at before you get to your actual house. So I do like that, and for me and probably other people, it's kind of worth it.
Yeah. for most people. Now, another thing that HOAs help with are, for lack of better words, problematic neighbors. You know, the neighbors, because I always tell people you can't choose your neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. So you know the neighbors that have 5-6 different cars in the front yard, right? Parked
bricks,
all on bricks. They got the tarp on it,
right.
You know. So the junk cars. They also help regulate trash. You know those neighbors that keep their trash bins out, a day or two past when it was trash day, like. Come on, we all can't work together here on the street.
Right.
That type of stuff. They do regulate that. They will send out violations and just help maintain that. I'm big on that. I don't like the trash being out and things like that. And
you don't like the whole weight bench on the front lawn?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that bothers me so much. Why are we lifting weights on the front? Yeah, I just can't. Anyway,
it's like a prison mentality.
It's awful. It's awful. And so HOAs, so that you don't have to do that, they will come in and hand out policy violations and all that stuff.
Let's tell them the story of when we had the rooster.
Okay, so this is back home in Cincinnati.
No HOA.
Yeah, no HOA, right? Okay. We've got, cute little 3-bedroom house. It's our first home.
4.
It was 4. You're right. Just a little cute tiny home though. And it was kind of situated on the corner. So you kind of had, neighbors. You could see a lot of yards from our yard. Regardless, didn't matter, because our neighbors decided to get chickens. That's right. Not a dog, not a cat, actual chickens. Now listen, if you own chickens, happy for you. And I hope that your neighbors are happy too. But for us living in the suburbs, I just wasn't clear as to why we decided to choose chickens as our pet. Well, anyway, they were babies at the time. And lo and behold, I'm asleep and it sounds like someone's killing a cat. Like that's what it sounds like in the middle of the night. And I cannot figure out what that is. Right. Cannot for the life of me. And this is happening for weeks, right? And so now at this point, it's getting louder, it's getting stronger. And I said, Jake, someone's killing something outside. Like that's all I could think of. Well, lo and behold, those chickens were growing up to be roosters. Mm-hmm. And what do roosters do at 5 o'clock in the morning without fail? Oh yeah, they crow. Mm-hmm. And they were making that noise at 5 o'clock on the dot every single morning. Drove me insane. We didn't have an HOA, so I have to call the city. And I'm like, what's your policy on pet chickens? Right. The lady's like, what? What are you talking about? I said, oh, you heard what I said. What is your policy on pet chickens? Ma'am, I don't think people are supposed to have. I said, well, I see them. I see them outside. Yeah. And they're crowing. It was a mess.
Some people, especially on the West Coast, that's a lot more popular, and it's not.
We were in Ohio.
Yeah, in Ohio, it's not like on a farm in Ohio, like suburb Ohio. That is not.
That's not common.
It's not a thing. It's not common.
Cats, dogs. That's it. That's where we live. Like cats and dogs.
Or something.
Yeah, maybe a bunny. That's it. Anyway, because we didn't have an HOA, we had to wait quite some time for those roosters to be gone. But
yep,
we had to make it happen. Anyway.
So the other benefit, and this is like huge right now because we're in the process of laws and ordinance changing. So an HOA regulates illegal uses of properties within the subdivision or condos. So by that we mean Airbnb, short-term rentals, and things like that.
They do.
So, I'm 50-50 because I'm half investor, half realtor. But let's face it, wild parties are, nobody wants a wild party next to the place that you live in.
Right.
So having wild parties and things like that with short-term rentals, that is a breach of the quiet enjoyment of your property. So they regulate things like that. So if you're really close to other people, close quarters, no backyard, things like that, HOAs regulate the illegal use of properties, meaning short-term rentals, Airbnbs and things like that. So, which is good, because if you just have a bunch of, partying going on in the house and things like that, it does interfere with the use and enjoyment of other people's property. So, HOAs definitely regulate things like that.
Speaking of enjoyment, I got another story for you. You want to hear it? Okay. So my bestie, bless her heart, we'll just say bestie, she just told me this story. And every so often at night, when they go to bed, they are being sung to sleep by their off-key neighbor who wants to play music at the top of the volume and sing at the top of his lungs. And there is no HOA where they live.
They play a trumpet or such.
Yes, and he plays the trumpet. The funny thing is, being that she is also a singer, she gets very upset because he's singing off key too, and she wants to go over there and tell him, "This is your no." But anyway, she is. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that they said. The next time they move, they're gonna pick something that has an HOA, because there's noise ordinances that are in many HOAs, and so after 10 o'clock, you won't hear things like that, and so that definitely helps just with the peace and quiet of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
But let's get into these cons, though. The cons of, or the disadvantages of being a part of an HOA. So what would you say is like the first one?
I think this is the biggest one for me. So I definitely am okay with HOAs, but for me, I joke with a lot of my clients and say the HOA is like the mob. They have more control over your property than you, it seems like.
Yeah.
So they do regulate things that you can and can't do with your property. So like in HOA bylaws, you may want a bright red front door, and they have a stipulation where you have to have neutral colors or certain colors to kind of match the scheme of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They even go to the extent of, sometimes they have people driving around. I know one of my clients said that they kept bothering her because the light that was over her address, the light
was out.
So it's like, what if you didn't have time to get around to it, or what if it was a big ticket item and you just couldn't do it at the particular time? So they do have control over things that you can or can't do, or you have to get prior approval or permission to do alterations to your property.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And again, these are HOAs, I would say, are on the spectrum. So some HOAs are very, very strict, and some are not as strict. Some handle, that maintenance right out front of the community, and some handle a little bit more. So you will receive bylaws when you purchase your home that are transferred over to you, that give you the whole list of what they cover, what you can and cannot do, and all that stuff. And that's, when you are able to find out what you have invested in, I'll say it that way. But speaking of investment, one of the disadvantage, cons, just something to know, is that it does cost, and you know this, right? An HOA is something that is a payment every month. I think what many people don't know is that this is not a part of your mortgage.
Right.
So when you are looking at homes, and you can, down to the penny, figure out, okay, this will be my mortgage payment every month. This is how much taxes are, insurance, all that stuff. HOA is something totally different. And so it's important that your realtor understand how that could affect your debt to income ratio and your monthly payment.
Right.
So for instance, just to keep it simple, if your mortgage is $2,000 a month, and that includes the taxes, the insurance, everything, if that's your mortgage payment, but your HOA is $200 a month, you're actually paying $2,200 a month. It's not included in that mortgage. And so sometimes you could be looking at something that is perfect as far as your mortgage payment, but then that HOA is pretty high, and then it could knock you out. So it's good to understand that. It's good to understand if you're going to be looking at something that has an HOA in it, it's good to talk to your loan officer about that and your real estate agent so that everybody's on the same page as far as what you can afford as far as your monthly payment a month. If it's $1,500 a month and that's what you can afford, then you're going to have to include that HOA. So that means your monthly payment really needs to be about $1,300 a month.
Yeah.
And then that will give you, that room to make that HOA payment. I've seen HOA payments as low as $16 a month. And obviously they're not as strict. They don't have as many amenities and all that stuff. But I've seen HOAs that are as high as $400 a month. And so based on the community you're looking to move into, it's good to understand what those numbers look like.
Yeah, and also what's included in HOA, because it may be a higher monthly payment, but some HOAs include water, trash, landscaping. So you go out to Home Depot and buy a lawnmower, the lawnmower costs, and then you have gas, and then you have to buy a weed eater. So you kind of have to weigh everything out. It's like, do I want to go and buy all these tools to keep up my yard and maintenance and things like that, or do I want to pay a HOA and just
and let them handle it,
take care of it? And then, if it includes water or trash, that's something to consider. It's not as much of a obligation.
There's like that opportunity cost where you would pay that water bill on your own. Now it's a part of your HOA, so you can kind of consider making that adjustment. Well, I don't have to make a separate water bill payment. It already comes in handy here. So that's definitely another good point. Good point.
So the last disadvantage is we talked about HOA can kind of control what you can do to your property. The last thing is they kind of regulate what you can do with your property. So when we talked about the short-term rentals or Airbnbs, they do have bylaws and regulations that stipulate if you can do a short-term rental, or even if you can rent your property out at all. Some are very strict where they don't like a lot of renters and things like that. It's not a lot like that because the rental market is so strong, especially here and in major markets. But you have to look at the bylaws because they also regulate what you can do with your property. So, short-term rentals, period. Group homes, different things like that. So they kind of regulate what you can do with your property also.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Okay, so we've gotten through the pros and cons of having an HOA, but maybe you're one of those people that don't want to deal with an HOA at all. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pros and cons of not living in an HOA. Now, I know I've shared some stories. We probably got more stories to share, but let's get into the pros of no HOA.
Well, one of the biggest reasons that people buy a home, period, is because they want to be able to do what they want to do. A lot of times when you rent, you have to get permission to do the smallest thing is like paint. So part of the pride of home ownership is people want to do their own landscaping, and they want to go pick out flowers for spring, or cactus and rocks, if you live in the desert. But people, like the control factor is I own a home and I get to do what I want to do. So no HOA, you don't have that control. So you can paint your house bright fuchsia if you want to, or you can paint it white. So you have more control and it's not regulated over what you can do to your home.
Absolutely. Oh, another story. We have a friend whose HOA says that they must have 5 trees in their front yard. That is a real HOA policy. They must have 5 trees in their yard. Where they get these trees, I don't know. But that is an actual HOA rule. So when you want to do something with your home, without an HOA, you definitely have that freedom for sure. Okay, now on the flip side, having HOA versus not having an HOA is that you can do what you want with your home. Ding, ding, ding. So, like Jay was saying, that HOA controls what you can do with it, where there are literal HOA laws out there that say you cannot rent this home. Period. And so if you wanted to do that, this is also why it's very important. Side note, this is why it's important to understand your why.
Right.
Why are you buying? Where do I see myself in 5 years? Where do I see myself in 10 years? Because if you're seeing yourself renting your home out, maybe 10 years from now, maybe you've outgrown it, maybe you get married, maybe you move away, but you want to keep this piece of real estate and you see yourself renting it, it's good to know what these laws and bylaws are so that you're not making a purchase or an investment that you can't do what you want with in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a side note. But back to having no HOA, of course, then you do have that freedom to do with your home what you want. Now, that doesn't mean that you can do things that are outside of city laws and permits, because
right.
you still need to have city laws and permits. And I think also that's where it gets a little tricky, and where you see homes that have additions that have not been permitted and things like that, because they're not in an HOA. And so you don't have that HOA kind of looking, close range,
right.
Down your back. But they didn't get the right permits with the city, or, they didn't follow city laws and things like that. And so now you've got something in the back that doesn't have a permit, the city don't know anything about. And so I'm getting ahead of myself. But again, you can still do with your property what you want. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last benefit of having no HOA is just the exact opposite of having one. You don't have to pay a HOA fee.
Mm-hmm.
So you're calculating your mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and no HOA fee.
That's it.
Yeah, so you don't have
That's
to
your
pay
payment.
the HOA fee. So
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely a pro, because, less money, less payments are a good thing.
True.
But let's talk about the flip side of it. So the disadvantages of not having an HOA.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you get those neighbors that want to have a full-on concert at 11 o'clock at night. Okay? I'm in my mid to late 30s. I don't want to hear your whole concert. Okay? Y'all keep that on inside. But you do have, those neighbors that want to have those parties. You have those neighbors that have a short-term rental, and they don't always know what's going on in that short-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have the neighbors that like to lift weights in their front yard, which bothers me to no end. And if you're one of those people, yes, I'm judging you. Okay, but back to the podcast. That's the disadvantage of not having an HOA. Aside from calling the police, you really don't have that leverage of, well, this is our policies, you're in violation and everything else. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's especially troubling when you have like an issue like right next to you. So if you're a person that's real meticulous and you like to keep your yard up nice, and then there's somebody right next to you and theirs looks a mess all of the time.
Yeah.
Even like not as much here, but like, weeds and things tend to blow over, and tree leaves and tree limbs and things fall, and so it can affect your property because you have things falling from the neighbor's property over to your property. And
it affects your property value.
Oh yeah, especially like resale, showings. People look at the house next to the left
up and
and
down
to
the
the right.
street.
They go kind of around and look at things like that. So you have to weigh that out. Are you gonna do something that's out of the norm that would really require you not to have a HOA, or would you rather pay a little bit and make sure that you have the things that you care about taken care of?
Yeah, very true. Good point. The other thing of disadvantage of not having an HOA is you don't get that neighborhood upkeep. So you don't get the landscaping, and you gotta do your home trash, your water, all the things that you may see in an HOA. really don't have that. And some people, again, like you said, some people don't, put a huge value on that. So if you don't, and you don't want that HOA fee, that disadvantage might not necessarily be a disadvantage for you. So something to think about, though, for sure.
Yeah, some people don't like to have, trash sitting out on the street for a couple
Mm-hmm.
days, and some people love it because they like to ride around and try to, not dumpster dive, but look for,
look for treasures.
Treasures, yeah, salvageable things
Yes.
that you can find. But if you hate seeing unsightly trash, or you hate taking your trash all the way out to, the curb and things like that, that may be a disadvantage of not being in the HOA. So, the last thing is it's less secure when you're not in the HOA. So no gate, so people can just drive straight into the community, pull straight up, on your house. And you don't have a security guard. You don't have people with golf carts running around looking for problems and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little less secure. So if you live alone, or have small children, or you have aging parents or something like that, those are things that you want to consider. Is like, do I want to be somewhere with no HOA or with a HOA? Like, some people don't mind paying a little bit more to have that security or peace of mind that somebody is looking out, or you at least have to be stopped at the entry gate, or you got to know somebody, like, why you here.
Yep.
So it is a little less secure, and with technology we have cameras and rings and everything
get all
like
kinds of
that.
stuff.
So some people still have that, even though they are in the HOA and have gated guards and everything else. But yeah, something to think about or something to consider. Is like, it's up to you for your security and how you want to regulate things.
For sure. All right. Well, we have given you the advantages and disadvantages of an HOA versus a property that is not in an HOA. And if you have any more questions about that, go ahead and put them in the comments below. We would love to answer them and help you. And make sure that you have subscribed. If you haven't, go ahead and hit that button down there in the corner and the bell so that you're notified every time we upload new content. Well, guys, enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next time.